Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good day wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the next episode of No Dice, No Glory. Sponsored by our jobs that actually pay us money, we're coming to you not at all live from an abandoned arms factory deep under a mountain in West Virginia. We are proud to proffer to you the finest in wargaming coverage. Without any further ado, let's get this show on the road.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tales of the Sale. We are back. We're trying to keep a more regular schedule. Our that's partially determined by my ability to edit things, and we're entering kind of my busy season of the year. So we'll do our introductions. I am joined this evening by Tyler. I stayed up too late watching a movie. Stone.
Hey, everybody.
Glenn, the gentleman farmer Van Meter.
Hello, everyone.
And I am Tom Chairborne Mullane. We're entering the busy season for Mr. Mullane because I teach an AP class at the high school, and the test is in 12 days as we record this. So I've gotten to give all my traditional speeches to children, scaring them, making them lose hope. And I like that part, but I also do a lot of work to try to actually give them hope and prepare them for the class. So it's been a busy week for me, but
wait,
I'll get into some of what I've been up to, but we'll start out with Glenn. Go ahead. Tell us
I
what
was
you've
going
been
to
doing.
ask. You told us they didn't know what the Cold War was, so aren't you just going to be removing hope by telling them?
Yeah. Like I asked them, I'm like, what did you do during 7th and 8th grade? I thought they covered this. And they're like, you mean during COVID? And I was like, touche. You win this round, kids. I guess your lack of knowledge is excused by a global pandemic. I'll do my best to cover the entire history of the Cold War in the next 2 days.
But lucky you're going to get to experience firsthand what we were all afraid of for 45 years.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be alive.
Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh. All right, well, we'll actually start with Tyler. So, Tyler, because these notes haven't been updated since you jumped on late, this tells us that you will be flying out for Adepticon on Wednesday.
Which I
Is
did.
that correct? You did that?
Not this last Wednesday, no. I did go out to Adepticon. I don't think we've done an episode since I got back from Adepticon. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Flew me out. I had a room there in the Historicals venue because we were all on separate, kept us apart from the weird kids that play Warhammer. Next blessing, I guess. But yeah, we had a tournament out there. We had, I think it was like 6 people kind of per game. It wasn't awesome, but I kind of chalked that up to things were really crazy going into it. We weren't sure if it was going to fire off at all. And it was just kind of me running it. So I rolled in. Firelock shipped me some terrain. I got all of that out on the table. We didn't have table toppers, so I ran over to the guys at Table War that do the fat mats. So I grabbed those. They really hooked us up. I think Firelock are now the proud owner of like 10 more large of the neoprene mats that they sell. And then we got the shipment of prize support in time for round 3 of the first tournament. So it was kind of slammed together. It was pretty solid.
Any shout outs you want to give to some of the players that made it out? Because I imagine you got to see some people that you wouldn't normally see because you were not here on the East Coast.
Josh Shivik was a huge help the entire time. In the quartermaster group, he's not a quartermaster. I told him he was welcome to claim any of the events that he wanted to. He took a lot of photos. He was one of 2 players that went the distance in the Ironman. I got in on, it was Wednesday night. I got in, checked into the venue, found him. He was already running demos of Oak and Iron in the open play spaces. Like, I was like, I'm going to be here and run this tournament. And he's like, if there's anything you need, let me know. So he was lending people ships to fill in their Oak and Iron lists, let me borrow his Blood and Plunder figures in order to run some demos for people. I used his Blood and Valor army to demo that game for people. So all around, that guy, like, I planned to be at the event with Mitch, and it ended up with him kind of being the second guy in charge, or the second, like, other half at the event. It was awesome. So a huge thank you to him. Kind of sorry that it was so late getting out because we haven't done an episode since then.
Is he planning on coming out to HistoriCon? Did you talk to him about that at all, or no?
I think that he is. He's a lot more local to Adepticon. Like, I would have supplied a lot of this stuff myself, but I flew coach. So they're like, Firelock at one point was like, we thought you had the gaming mats. And I'm like, of all the things I could have brought along, 6-foot-long rolls of gaming mat. Ain't it, guys? I think he said he might be making the drive to come over to HistoriCon. Adepticon is kind of in his backyard from descriptions. He's not terribly far from that venue. So it would be a drive getting here.
Okay. I feel like we had a rare opportunity to actually talk to each other and see each other in person only a week ago for the tournament, which we're going to get into. So it feels like we've recorded sooner than we have, because I know we recorded at the end of March, and it's been some time. So, like, I keep thinking that we've recorded stuff to update people, and we haven't done that. So, like, I'm trying to match in my head what's gone on since we've actually recorded.
Yeah, we were supposed to get a recording in like a week and a half ago, and then life happened.
Yeah, I also think that we were like,
we were prepping for the tournament a week and a half ago, aren't we?
Yeah, part of me thought that, like, I had recording equipment like Mitch does to do like mobile recording, and then I'm like, oh right, I don't have any of that. So, because like if I had the stuff that Mitch often carries with him to some of the big events, I would have probably done a live record where we would have been able to like record midway through and do like a play-by-play at the tournament, which would have been cool. But next time, next time I try to do something like that.
I do enjoy doing those at HistoriCon and the other HMGS conventions with Mitch.
Those are always fun because you can bring in like the top players that finished, and you can kind of interview people that are kind of floating by. And I always really enjoy doing those shows when we get to have an impromptu mid recording, because I always love listening to those like when other gaming groups do it, because you get to feel like you're there, and I get to hear from a lot of different people, and I always enjoy that. So
it was cool at Adepticon. I ran into the guys. So, like, trying to think of the family friendly way to use this example, but the best I can do is, like, if you're in a talent show and you're the least talented person in the room, or at the right talent show, like you've made the cut, right? But I got to hang out with like imposter syndrome galore. I got to hang out with the guys from Lead Pursuit podcast, guy from Mini Wargaming. If I mess his name up, I'm gonna feel terrible. I think it was Josh, and they were hanging out talking shop about podcasting and what their mobile rigs were like and what microphones they use. And I'm like, I'm on a gaming headset in my living room on a laptop that, for all intents and purposes, is like that thing that they pull up Dr. Zoloff on in the Avengers. But yeah, doing the roaming podcasts was pretty awesome, and seeing what other people have put together for their gaming hobby podcasting was super cool.
So Glenn, what have you been up to since the last time we recorded? I know you actually prepped a ton of terrain, but walk us through the build up to the tournament.
I mean, I made it look like I prepped a ton of terrain. I think I only completed a couple of houses. So yeah, there was terrain prep. I got a lot of resources together to do the terrain prepping, but then my family was also busy taking up a lot of time because they're the chief thing that I have to take care of. So I didn't get as much terrain prepped as I would like. That said, we still had more than enough to do what we needed to do. We filled all the tables, didn't we, guys? And then we ended up not using several of them.
Yeah, we didn't use a lot. Glenn and I had a little painting party because we had our last paint night the night before the tournament. So we got a whole bunch of people coming on. We even had people get onto Discord in the car coming up from
That's
North
true.
Carolina. And it was really funny because you had guys in a car on Discord trying to talk to guys in a car on Discord in Oregon, and so it was funny
Yeah.
listening to them try to talk to each other.
That was good. So yeah, we did tournament prep. Like Tom said, the last night was down here. We were both working on stuff. My daughter Alice got to contribute by telling Tom or demanding that Tom paint things certain colors. So now I have some nice like indigo colored die sacks as part of the screen.
Glenn, let me interject here. Tom Mullane, Master of Science Education, BA History. There were some sacks that were that color. Alice knows what she's talking about. She's a smart young lady, and it's historically accurate. So history.
Right. It was the original Crown Royal shipments.
Yeah, let's go with that. That sounds legit. That sounds legit.
So
it made her really happy. She was very excited about it.
Yes. So then when we got back from the tournament, it kind of took a day to like reestablish the farm, as everything was crazy. Then I started on tournament analysis, and then this past weekend.
Hold on, pause.
What?
So Tyler, let me just tell you this great story. So we're leaving in the morning, and as we're walking to the car loaded full of stuff, Glenn kind of casts a glance to his right and sees the empty feeding trough for like all the male sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And he just says to himself, well, I guess they should eat. No. And then we just got in the car and drove away. So
I think it was more like, oh, I meant to put hay out for them. Oh, well,
yeah.
Do it.
Boy, I really should feed those animals. No, Corinne will do it. I was quietly laughing to myself. They did get fed for people that are concerned. The animals do get fed. I was just really funny because there was an intent on your part, both of our part, to put the stuff out, but we just didn't have an opportunity.
Yeah, we ran out of
Fortunately,
time.
the only thing that relies on me is the cat, who almost got out the morning because the same thing, loading up armloads of crap into the car, and I'm just like, oh, the door's wide open. That's cool.
So yeah, I did about a day of tournament analysis, and then I spent the week between our tournament and the next weekend prepping for our first post-COVID farm show for my wife's yarn business, which was a massive success. But I definitely spent every night till like midnight helping like label skeins of yarn and things like that and print documents, and I still have
she worked her butt off on it because it really she was commenting that like it was really messy in the downstairs it wasn't like as far as I'm concerned. I've seen messy, like I'm sure it got worse before it got better, but she had everything organized by color, and you were helping her do that. But how much of her stuff did she sell?
Oh, a small portion, but she did pretty good business. It's just that it's all I don't want to say it's like a niche market, but homespun yarns and things like that can go for more money than you would expect as a gamer. Of course, as gamers, we pay way more money for models than other people would think is reasonable. So I think each hobby has its own aspects of that. I mean, if I go with like the average price, she probably sold about, I think, 40 skeins of yarn plus a bunch of like little knickknacks and pin cushions and things like that. Isn't huge, but it was it's the most successful show we've ever had relative to the buy-in and that kind of stuff. But more importantly, somehow she ended up as like the top name in the local newspaper article.
Which I thought was really cool. I shared that with my wife too. She was excited about it.
Yeah, so
neat.
That's actually helped us because we've actually gotten a couple more hits on the website since then. So hopefully that trend continues, and it's also helped. She's now a lot more confident. She wants to go to do a few more shows, which there aren't a ton of farm shows for fiber like that, but we're gonna find a few, and then she'll be at those. If anybody has a girlfriend or a wife that likes to knit or crochet, get in touch because I can send you yarn for a price. And then, of course, I'm always surrounded by screaming children.
I actually have to say, I have even more respect for Corinne than I did before I came down there because, like, we got back from the tournament real late. probably around 11. And my expectation was that, the kids would have created their own Lord of the Flies style society, passing a conch shell.
That was
But
also my expectation, by the way.
they were asleep. They were all asleep, which tells me that Glenn needs to learn from Corinne. So she's doing something you're not, Glenn. I don't know what it is.
Apparently.
Maybe she gave them a lot of sugar and they all crashed at the same time. I mean,
I don't know, because I'm pretty sure. Didn't Sandra wake up like shortly after we got back, and I ended up feeding the baby and.
Yeah, you're right. She did.
Anyway.
Modern problems require modern solutions. All right. Anyway,
she got the credit.
She did. She definitely did. But you got to run the tournament all day, so I think it's a pretty good trade-off.
Yep. But now you get to explain why the podcast is late.
So the podcast is late because I got a great birthday gift for myself. When I drove home on Easter Sunday, which is also my birthday, I got back home and I started to feel not so great because my gift to myself for my birthday was a heaping basket of Easter COVID. And it's been a fun ride. I was out from work for most of the week, and I got a very mild strain of it. I was fine. I'm recovered now, and so is my wife, who got sick as well. But we're both good. But my voice was pretty shot, so the odds of me actually being able to record a podcast without sounding like I'm reading my last will and testament to somebody is they're adjusting the notes as I'm recording this and talking to you, so I apologize for laughing. So I thought that I'd be able to use my time at home without many symptoms really to get a lot of stuff painted and do hobby projects, scrap projects, but that is not what wound up happening. Instead, we had a yard of compost delivered, and I proceeded to spread it all over the property. I also built my own composting fence out of used pallets and finished a lot of other projects around the house. I did like 15 loads of laundry. I vacuumed and cleaned the kitchen. I cooked food for the next 5 days. So
How 15 loads of laundry?
Yeah, we had to do a lot of different blankets and sheets because we had been using them to kind of protect the couch when we had a foster pet, and
Oh,
they had
okay.
unfortunately had a lot of accidents, and so there's a lot of like isolated loads like that. Yeah, I don't go through that much laundry. I know that.
Say, even with the whole family generating laundry, I do maybe 5 loads a week tops.
No, it was because we had to segregate loads that had been covered in doggy pee, unfortunately. But yeah, so the other thing that's going on with me is now that I'm back at work, the AP exam for AP World History is in 12 days, and I have to get the kids ready for it. Traditionally, my students do very well on the test. I give the credit for that to them as opposed to myself. But last time we had a normal test, 80% of my kids passed with a 3 or higher. And we typically outscore the country on the writing portion of the exam. We're in the 80th percentile. So my kids are better at writing than 80% of the country. And if they walk out of my class with no better skill than being more effective written communicators, then even if they forget about the Cold War they're supposed to have learned about in 8th grade, I consider my job a success. So I haven't gotten to do much hobby stuff, but the tournament was a real highlight. I'm glad I got to come down and do it, and I'm glad I got to actually play in it. So I really appreciate you guys taking the lead on the running of things so that I could actually play a game without getting pulled aside to do a bunch of demos. And you guys really did excellent work in that regard. Which brings us to the tournament. And so I'll turn it over to Glenn to talk about logistics in the venue, and I'll let Glenn go first. Then Tyler, you can jump in right after him because I had never been to the store before, but Glenn, you've been there before, and we had a pretty good experience overall, I would say. So go ahead and give a shout out to Critical Hit Games and talk about how it went.
Yeah, I mean, friend of the show, Preston Jacka, and I have used Critical Hit Games probably since kind of last summer, spring, when COVID first started slowing down a bit. So we've run a few events there. We have a good working relationship with them. So we were in communication ahead of time, much like we recommended on the Lead Up podcast when we talked about how to run things. We'd arranged that the store would, the manager would be there, or an employee would be there early to let us set up, because we wanted to open, like, we wanted to have tournament lineup essentially when the store opened, which worked flawlessly. We got there an hour early. We had all the tables set up and ready to go. The only thing I think I would fix is we forgot to mention, like, figure out what the store's protocol is as far as tournament admittance versus getting the making sure that people pay their entry fees. Because there was a slight miscommunication on that. Everybody did pay their entry fees. It wasn't an issue. But there was a little bit of confusion. As other than that, like, we got there, they're ready to go. They had the tables mostly set up and ready. They had committed to putting up 2 tables, which meant that Tom, Tyler, and I would get the other 12. We ended up not needing all of the space, but we still had more tables set up than were absolutely needed for players, which gave us a little room for rotating things around. Our forms worked pretty well. Blood and Plunder is a new system for me as far as ranking tournaments. So logistically, sitting down between rounds and trying to figure out the scores and who was in what position. That took me a few minutes, but I got a lot faster at it as we went through the day. We're able to do it all on the laptop, so we've got data that we're starting to kind of put together to see how things work. Are there any logistics notes you guys have that I'm not thinking of?
I think that the big suggestion I'd give to anybody who's setting up a tournament of their own, like, once you get above 12 people, you really need to make sure that you have a pretty solid idea of how you're going to do the record keeping and the pairings and things like that. And I think that coming in with the pre-printed sheets that people could fill out and turn in as, like, their ticket helped us kind of set up tables, pairings, and things like that. And I built a whole spreadsheet that we could use for later, but, like, the spreadsheet I built needs work. And I think as long as you have those note cards that are easy to read and easy to see and easy for people to understand how they should fill out, like, I think it worked real well. And we make that tournament packet available to everybody. If people want it or tournament organizers want it, we're happy to kind of pass it along. So
yeah, I think I need to add a judge only section off to the right, because there was a lot of notes I was making in the margin that both on the day of the tournament and later when I was doing some of the analysis work.
that's a good idea.
So yeah, there might be
Tyler,
a
what do you think of the whole process of running it? Because you guys are speaking to this from the actual TO perspective, and I'm coming at it more as a player.
Getting everybody in, like Glenn said, the paying in on the venue, that kind of got messed up. Got everybody in. There were a few things that we wanted to do that kind of got lost in the mix. We still managed to do the superlative awards. It just kind of wanted to do an Armies on Parade. That sort of got mixed. Wanted to organize getting everybody some food. Kind of missed that. But record sheets is something that I put together, and I think people the record sheets were very thorough. But 2 things that we found were people are still having difficulty with the strike point rule. The fact that it's not cumulative between turns, it's a status check that you reset everything to 0 and you check every turn. So we had some people that were handing in sheets where they recorded like 9 strike points. And you're only hurting yourself when you do that as a player, but it would be really hard to go back to that player and be like, okay, so how many did you actually have? And the other thing that we did on the sheets, and I did it more so that we could always have we would always have all the information at a glance. Had the players record their opponent and themselves on the same sheet. And that sometimes caused confusion because it's like, you would write who you played, whether they won, lost, or if you had a draw. Something else that we can kind of polish in the future, but whether you had a draw, and then but the number of strike points they had accumulated at the end of the game was, then you would do the same for yourself, whether you won, lost, draw, and how many strike points you had at the end of the game. People were only filling out one, or they were like flipping the two. And I think if we had stood up at the beginning and kind of gone over it, I also think for any tournament organizers, if you do this enough times, if we do this again and we have the same crew, I think people will start to get it. Like, oh, this is how you record for a Blood and Plunder tournament.
Also, one thing I'll just throw in to fully clarify the strike point thing for people, and Tyler or Glenn, you can correct my verbiage if it's a little off. But the thing that always confused me about reading that rule is when it says it's cumulative. I had assumed that cumulative meant it just keeps adding up. Hence, people kind of saying, "Oh, I have 9 strike points, 10 strike points," but they say cumulative, but they don't mean it rolls over. So nothing continues into the next turn. It's just that if you were suffering 2 strike points because of the losses you had, you would just have the exact same 2 strike points if you calculated stuff at the end of the next turn, because those guys are still dead. And like if you're seizing an objective and it says, oh, the defender will take a strike point for any turn that the attacker is like, in possession of the objective and not shaken, that can often tip the game in favor of somebody who already has dealt their opponent a lot of blows. But so like, it's very rare you're going to see one person has 4 strike points against them, or 5, in any given turn. Because it's rare to have a force that big to be able to suffer that kind of a loss and not have just been tabled or run off the board. So cumulative doesn't mean rolling, is the way that I kind of clarify that, because then it made sense to me when I described it to myself that way.
Yeah, I think the only we gave predetermined missions, and I think you'd have to max out at 4 strike points. Like that's the most anybody could earn, because it's 3 for losing 3/4 of your force, and then 1 for your opponent having the objective. Like I literally think that's the maximum number you can have. I don't know.
You can get to 5.
Oh,
because it's a quarter rounded down. So if you had 33 models, your quarters would be every 8 casualties. You could still technically have 1 model on the table who is having a really bad time. He's still there, and you've got 4 strikes without being fully tabled.
True. Do you? I forget this one. I should know it, but because I never have. I rarely experience this. Do you get a strike point for your commander dying? I don't remember.
I don't
believe
so.
But if your commander's dead and you're forced to take a strike test, you just die.
Yeah, I know that.
And the force runs. But I don't think he's a strike point by himself, unless there's certain special commanders where his loss would count as something special. But I think it says so in the guy's description. One thing I will say in relationship to strike points and missions and things like that was, this is the first time we used our mission pack. We had a couple of little typos that got kind of tweaked or fixed as we went. But I think that the big thing that we'd likely change is the second mission is one which we set up to be kind of a fun treasure hunt, where you'd walk up to an objective, you kick it, and then you see what number comes up when you roll a d6, and whatever number you get is the actual objective people are trying to get to. And what happened in a number of the games, mine included, is my guys walked up to the first box, kicked it, that was the one they needed to take, and they just grabbed the objective and camped on it for the rest of the game, and they forced the guy to just take a strike point every turn, while he tried to charge across the entire board into like a wall of musket fire. So there were several games that were kind of over before they began because of the way that we chose to arrange the boards, and I think we need to kind of look at that and find a way to tweak it or adjust it. I don't know if Tyler, you had any ideas, or Glenn, you had any ideas about how you would change that one around?
Yeah, there's an easier way to do placement. We need to bring them more into the center of the table, I think,
rather than quartering it. So the way that scenario is originally written, because what I did, I guess this would be 2 now, so we have to be careful. But Justin and I have wanted to figure out a method or a tournament pack for the game with scenarios in it. That's something that Mike has wanted to do. He said that if we beat him to it, all the power to us. We didn't get to that for this tournament. So instead, what we did is we took the scenarios that were in the book, tried to kind of pick the 3 most fair. This one with the 5 objectives, and you roll a d5 to figure out which one you're going for. Normally, the players get to place those objectives. And for ease and for speed of getting everything out, we didn't have anybody do that, and we just kept it as fair as possible. And it is still fair in the sense that in any other kind of all of these were neutral objectives. It didn't matter who was the attacker or defender in the game. With this one, there's a 40% chance that you're going to kick over the objective that's in one of your table quarters. There's a 40% chance the other guy does it, an 80% chance that one of you hits it in your table quarters, and only a 20% chance that it's the neutral objective in the middle. So fair, yeah.
All of them are worth something, but maybe the one in the middle is worth like more points, and the ones on the edge are worth varying points. But they're less. Yeah, I don't know. I'd think about it, but it was cool to get to play test it because we got to play 9 games because we had 18 players. We had 24 signed up. We had a couple of last minute drops. I will also just toss out a quick apology because we had a couple that came to play, but the mask policy for the store had changed right before the tournament happened. So in the original published rules that we put out, there was rules about masking and stuff like that. And as that shifted and the store policy changed, we adjusted with it. And we had always kind of said that our policy be the store's policy, which I realize is frustrating for somebody that showed up with the expectation that the rules would be one way when the rules are another. So, they still got to do a demo, but I'm bummed we couldn't accommodate them and put them in a position where they could actually play a couple games and try it out. But hopefully next time.
Yeah, I ran that demo. I masked up. I ran it. I totally understood. They had little ones at home that they were worried about bringing it home to them. I mean, the tournament, we had people sharing 6-foot tables. We were close. We had 24 people sign up. We had 18 participants. And then I ran a demo for that couple of 2. And then another 2 players rolled by who were looking to pick up, I think they were looking to pick up a galleon or using it in Dungeons and Dragons or some other game that they play. And it's like, if you're going to jump both feet in, why don't we demo you the game? So I gave them a real quick rundown of the game. So we had 22 people were there. It's just only 18 of them were in the event.
Thanks to you, we sold the game to people that weren't even playing in the event. And I think the store did pretty well. I think, Glenn, you checked in with them afterwards. I think they did
the store did great. They did twice the business that we had seen them do it at the best of our small community events. So that was good news for them.
That's great. And they were really great. As an outsider coming to the store, the place was organized, was welcoming, it was friendly. They were pretty generous with their time. They stuck around kind of late after we did a C game at night. They let us bring in food and stuff like that, and they didn't have any kind of unreasonable requests or demands. They really were great. I would go there again, and I'd recommend it to anybody. Critical Hit was fantastic.
And they do keep everything clean there.
Yeah. Let's talk about all the stats that you guys. So, Glenn, you spent some time doing tournament analysis. Let's start with Glenn and kind of answer that question C on the notes. So, was there anything that surprised you about the tournament, either in terms of lists that did well, or kind of patterns that you wound up seeing?
Well, I was a little sad that my beloved Dutch only appeared once out of 18, but I will, however, I'll put a caveat. We saw a lot of Dutch units on tables. We just didn't see the faction because this is a land tournament. The Dutch aren't specialized for the land. But we did get representatives of each of the different nationalities. We had French, Spanish, unaligned, natives, English, and Dutch all present. If you would bet that unaligned went to Brethren of the Coast or pirates in general, you'd lose that because the Scottish militia turned out. 3 different players brought Scottish militia lists.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 2 of them finished in the top half. So
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, the top 6.
yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Yeah, Scottish, they did good. And admittedly, they were both pretty aggressive players, which is what the Scottish militia need to do. And the only reason the other guy didn't do very well is because Tom beat the snot out of him.
Yeah, I kicked him in.
I
felt bad. He's a really nice man.
Yeah, that was the mission that Tom got where
I just kicked over the barrel, and he took it really well. He was a great sport about it.
And I felt bad because it was a map that I had set up to be like kind of a Fire on the Frontiers type map where like
it looked
there's
cool.
a road going through a fairly open area with trees all around it and a house on one side. But that just meant that the Scottish militia had to like run over an open ground towards Tom's force in cover.
So he also I learned a lot in this tournament, and I'd say one of the things that I learned is just how horrifying Lanceros are, because I had a unit of 8 of them, and in this particular game, he was getting close to kind of contesting the treasure chest, but he had to advance through the woods, and I had the Lanceros prone out of his range, so he couldn't get at him. He took a bunch of shots at him. They saved a bunch of times because they're elusive and they're prone and they're too far away. Then he started to get closer. I got up, moved, charged him, murdered half of his units, then retreated in the same turn because they have skirmishers. And I had activated them with one of the appropriate cards. So I basically jumped out of the woods, stabbed him in the face, ran back, and then he brought in another unit, and I did it to him again. He did finally kill them all, and at that point I was kind of happy for him that he had finally gotten some revenge. Those Lanceros basically held up an entire 3-unit Scottish piece of his force, and delayed him long enough for me to just win the game. And they basically won the game for me. And he just, yeah.
So an interesting flip side to that game is that, first of all, I want to say, Glenn, your Dutch were represented. Andrew Vogel was playing Dutch Privateers, and he grabbed Best Painted.
Well, I was.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. That is true.
The Scottish militia, Jaden King was running, and he's been on some of the paint nights. He's one of the guys that drove up from North Carolina. He ran Scott's militia in that mission with the 5 objectives on the Frontiers table that I did, which is kind of like a cross in the middle of the table. There's a river and there's a road with a bridge over it. One side
that was a cool table. Yeah, you had the whole building. It looked really, really cool, and you had the full French table, the full French army against him. That was a cool battle to look at.
The French kind of walked on one of the wheat fields, kicked over the objective, and had a cannon on it along with professional soldiers. And Jaden made, God bless this man, 2-inch move cavalry charge across, jumping a fence at the road, jumping a fence on the other side of the road, crossing the river, going through the wheat fields, and hit that cannon with cavalry and took it out. But he went through a really similar kind of not at all the terrain his list was designed to fight on. He'd have probably done better on the table that Tom, you were on. But yeah, I mean, he finished, I don't think he won that mission, unfortunately, but he did finish 6th overall. And that Scottish militia list was nasty. That guy definitely knows how to build lists.
Let me pull up. I've got the cards here. Let me pull it up real quick. Uh, yes, he lost that mission 3-2 on strike points.
It was close.
It was close. Yeah, I think it did come down to the very last turn.
Yeah.
So coincidentally, those guys were both in the running for favorite opponent as well, and they wrote each other down, which was like part of my tiebreaker. It was like, well, which of the favorite opponents voted for each other? And these guys messed it up for me. But it did ultimately go. Favorite opponent ended up being Ron McFarland, who is the gentleman who had the French Expeditionary Force with, it was just infantry, militia, and
a cannon.
Cannon.
Yeah, he was my vote for favorite opponent. He was my third game, and he's a super nice guy. His miniatures were beautifully painted. I thought that they just looked fantastic.
If anybody is coming from Flames of War background, he's part of the Hawks Hartford area weekly Kriegspielers group.
Oh, okay. They usually have like a room dedicated to themselves. They have a whole.
If you go to HMGS conventions, then they often have an entire room dedicated to their own club's stuff, and you can usually find him there with his other club members and doing stuff like that.
Yeah, his French army did look really good. It was wasn't Firelock minis, which is not something that we hold against anybody in a tournament. They were like urban French from the War of Spanish Succession. So they were in tricorns. They had socket bayonets. They're going to be great when Raise the Black comes out.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, if you run them as the French Marines, you probably do not too bad as the Fire on the Frontiers as well. But anyways, we haven't gotten to the actual who won yet. So going in order, first place went to one of the Harford County locals, Derek Kress. He had French Canadian militia. Second place went to the other Carolinian, Damian Nagel. I'm guessing it's Nagel. He had French Raiders. Third place went to Fernando Arteaga, who was running Spanish Tercios. And fourth place was some dude named Tom Mullane.
Wah, wah, sad trombone sound.
So Tom finally
top three
won some game.
Yeah, who knew that getting my head kicked in by Nagel and learning that I should actually take a list built to fight on land would have paid dividends. Because I finally started to figure out, it clicked for me this time around, where I'm like, oh, okay. The only game I lost was to the new player, because I wandered out into the middle of a field and then got shot, because I was like, maybe this is a good idea. And then I'm like, no, Tom, that's the old you. But it was enough to cost me a top finish. But I didn't. I'm glad that I didn't win a tournament that I was helping to put on anyway, because I feel like I don't know. It's just a part of me that feels like it's bad form. So I was psyched to get to play, and I'm psyched I did well. I'd say that surprised me, but I was just really stoked that we got that many people to come. I had a blast. I'm really happy for all the people that came in. Tyler, any other surprises for you in terms of things you saw or lists you noticed?
How huge the tournament actually was. I didn't think we were going to get that many people. Especially like having people drive as far as they did. That was really cool. I don't really think so much surprises. I mean, the lists that we got, they seemed pretty standard. There were new natives are definitely scary, but they're gaining steam. Not something that you see a lot of yet. In fact, a lot of people were playing with the older tribes, in part like people who could take warriors rather than braves were grabbing the warriors in, I think, that French Raiders list because they move faster. So that was kind of surprising that people were like, nah, I don't really want braves or Nioces. I'm going to take like the South American tribe guys.
Yeah, we did have two natives factions. One was Caribbean tribes. The other, I have written down Northeastern Woodlands. This is one of those things that I'm kicking myself for, because I didn't get like which book was that one out of? Was it the new Northeastern Woodlands or the old one? I don't know. And
I'm not
the
sure
list
either.
did change.
But I mean, we had Spanish Tercios, like of all things, finish in top 3. He grabbed 3rd under Fernando. You were running Tercios. You finished
Which
4th.
Yeah.
Fernando's minis were also beautifully painted, and he had a wonderful musician and banner bearer with his with his headquarters unit.
Standard Bearer
Yeah,
was
he
gorgeous.
did. His stuff was cool. Yeah, his stuff was cool.
He was runner up for best painted. So the best painted, by the way, was judged by the store staff. We mentioned we wanted to do armies on parade, but we kind of goofed it in that we didn't really have a good way for people to leave their stuff out and people to figure out whose stuff was what. So we'll have.
I think that's an easy fix for next time. You know, you just make sure you have your card next to your army, and you just put it out before you go to lunch. This way, when people come back and they're eating, they can kind of wander around and they can put a vote down.
Exactly. So, best painted was judged by store staff. Went to Andrew Vogel. Fernando had the runner-up with the beautiful Spanish tercios.
I think one thing any lessons for next time?
Kind of been hitting that as we've gone. Like, lessons for next time. Make sure that we get everybody to come in and know when to pay into the venue. Make sure that we remember to do armies on parade.
I'm still fixed on stats. I posted this in the Facebook group, but I was judging things. It was first off based on wins, then strike points, then it was strength of opponent. So like I added up how many strike points your opponents did, and even after that I had a 4-way tie group from like 12 to 15, and I had to run them out based on, or no, I'm sorry, it was strike points earned, then strike points issued or caused, and then it was strength of opponent, where I had to go through and like figure out the other opponent's scores to figure out how these guys did, because I ended up with a 4-way tie even after 3 tiebreakers.
Yeah.
So
do you think if we played 4 rounds that wouldn't be an issue?
Maybe not.
Flip
I don't know. That's a question for.
Is that so? We did 3 rounds. I think we only had one player go 3-0. Not very many people actually had a flawless record.
We had 2
I think there were
3-0s.
two 3-0s.
Okay. Out of 18 people, that's not bad. It means that the pairings were really good. It also means that everyone was pretty much on par with each other and the lists were balanced. So
now I think we only had one person do 3 losses.
Also good. The guy who won first though only gave up 1 strike point in the entire tournament. So that's kind of crazy.
Insane.
Yeah, I can't imagine going 3 games and only giving up 1 strike. And that was the Canadian militia. I think
is this something we do again? I think for sure we would. I definitely want to keep these spaced out because, you know, I don't have the ability to come down to Maryland on a regular basis unless it's coinciding with a vacation. But I think the next time we are running something will be at Historicon in July. And so, Glenn, you've been taking the lead on doing this. I know Tyler's been involved in the planning of it as well. I've been kind of taking a back seat. I just kind of sit back and smile as Mitch and you and Tyler are all trying to iron it out with Rufus and Mike and everybody else. But as of now, what's the plan, Glenn?
For Historicon?
Correct.
We do have one event before Historicon.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So Historicon, we pushed to do a Legends of the High Seas. However, we're also including Blood and Valor. So we're keeping the name Iron Man, just because Blood and Valor doesn't work with the High Seas so much. However, we are bringing in one additional tournament. So there will be 4 tournaments at Historicon. If you're competing in Iron Man, you need to compete in at least 3 of them. And if you compete in all 4, you're crazy. But we'll be doing the best 3 of the 4 for you to figure that out. We don't have the schedule finalized yet, just because we're still trying to make sure that everybody is in the appropriate time slots and things like that. But the Oak and Iron tournament is probably going to be Thursday. And again, I'm going to give you the probable days of the week here, but we can't give you like finalized times. Oak and Iron, probably Thursday. It'll be 50 points, squadron rules, so 2 to 4 ships, no ships of the line, 90-minute rounds. On Friday, we are hoping to have 2 tournaments. And again, the giant asterisk, we do not have a finalized schedule. We're going to go for a Blood and Plunder land tournament, 150 points. So we're getting a little bigger than we used to run for these tournaments. The tournament we ran at Critical Hits was an hour and 45-minute rounds. We think that was a little too generous on time. Most rounds, everybody finished well ahead of time. So we're cutting that down a little bit. We're going to do 90-minute rounds for these. The same day, I think, we're also going to do a Blood and Valor tournament, also 150 points, 60-minute rounds because the game does play a lot faster. And then the newer tournament that we haven't seen since
Pre-COVID.
Historicon 2019 is a Blood and Plunder Sea tournament. So there'll be ships. It's 200 points, 2-hour rounds, because I know people aren't as familiar with ships and things like that. But for all of these, we will have loaner forces available. Specifically for the sea tournament, we will have ships available. If you do not have a ship, you can contact us ahead of time and reserve one. That way you can build it into your list. You can't just show up and be like, I need a sloop, guys, and then a sloop we probably have, but we may not have.
If you're in touch with us, well before, if you let us know by early July, and we'll do another reminder when we record the May and the June pocket. We're going to keep harping on this, and as we plan more and more, you'll get more information. But we will provide something. Just kind of give us some notice.
The other thing that I want to point out about the sea tournament, we did this intentionally. If you're running a 150-point land list, you can hit 50 points on a ship very quickly. So if you're worried about it, you can honestly take your 150-point land list and put it on a boat. Now, I'm not encouraging people to do that because I really like natives with advanced setup and Vanguard and units with cool rules like Elusive, but we were trying to keep the sea tournament at 200 points, both so that you don't have to bring a slew of models. And goal here, and we're going to test this out, is we want to make sure that the big ships, like the 6th rate, it's hard to sneak a 6th rate into 200 points. We used to do them at 250 and they would show up. We're hoping that the small ships, Tartanas, Arcs, things like that, are a little bit more viable if we keep people from showing up with, huge broadsides, medium cannon.
Because you can put a 200-point crew on a bark. It may not be optimal. It might be a little tight as far as, standing room only.
I built a pretty gross Tartana list that somebody is going to be testing to see how they like it. It was 200 points. You can definitely do it.
Yeah. Brigantines are workable. A flute is maybe pushing it, especially if you're maxing the guns.
I think a light frigate is about as big as you can go without getting into some really weird gymnastics to make the list work.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about list building for this, because I think each of us is going to play in at least one of these tournaments. And we're still ironing out kind of who gets to play in which one and who's DMing one of them.
So I think, Glenn, you might be more up to date than I am. There was talk of a Blood and Steel tournament run by those guys, the guys who designed and wrote that game. Has that been
I have
nixed,
not,
or are we just waiting to hear if they're going to do that?
as of right now, I have not heard in the
Okay.
positive for that. They may still be focusing on like table games.
Right. And just trying to get like run demos and things like that.
Yeah, because I mean, pre-orders are out right now. The book should be out in about another month, from what I'm told. So the book will release, like, let's call it early June.
It's going to be tight for
Um,
people to show up for a tournament.
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't think
we'll
that's
have to,
happening.
yeah, because like we just got Fire on the Frontier has been anticipated a lot, and it came out what 3 months ago now, and we had 2 lists show up out of it, from what I can remember.
Mm.
So it's gonna be a few minutes while that stuff infiltrates the community. Even if Raise the Black managed to somehow drop before Historicon, I don't think we'd see more than 1 or 2 lists out of it. So I think Fire on the Frontier is going to be the latest stuff that we're seeing.
Most likely.
Now, other than the tournaments, there is mention of some themed games. Do we want to talk about those now as well?
I'll cover those. That's kind of what I've been. Mine has been hitting the tournament stuff really hard. Themed games. So far, it looks like friend of the show, Miguel Vega, is coming down, and he has a just irresponsible number of native miniatures,
He has
all
all the
painted up
natives.
by Rufus. They look beautiful. And we have Joe Forster from Blood and Pigment said that he is going to try and make it to Historicon, which will be cool because it'll be getting the West Coast log scene and the vastly superior in our ability to, yes, you guys, East Coast log scene together to run an event.
Hey,
And
is there any word on Guy?
I
Do we
don't
know if
know
he's
if Guy's coming or not. I know Joe has said that Joe's going to try and make it, but I don't think he speaks for Guy.
I'd love to see Dan Carlson show up for the Oak and Iron tournament.
Likewise, I'd like to just hang out with him for the weekend. But so between Blood and Pigment, Blood and Pigment, Tales of the Sale, and Miguel Vega, we're trying to put on the Great Swamp Fight at very large scale. We need to get this timed in around the tournaments because we refuse to schedule anything that's going to conflict with those tournaments because all 3 of us are tournament players or running the tournaments. So we're working on putting that together. We're also working
I think that's the
on...
bigger issue, is hosting our own party.
Yeah. The other thing that we are working on is we want to put on a big boat battle for everybody. Since plenty of people are going to be showing up with 200-point C tournament lists because you want to be in the Ironman and boats are cool. So bring a boat. We're hoping to put together a large, possibly 3 galleon and 6th rate kind of fleet action using Tom's super cool fort. The idea is to have players able to drop in, drop out. And
we didn't mention that Tom built a beautiful, super awesome fort that he started deploying as like part of a 3x3 table for the
Yeah, and then I was like,
tournament.
nah.
And immediately
not
looked over
happening.
and was like, Tom, that takes up half the map. And like, no, we can't use that. So that ended up becoming the demo table where it kind of delineated the shoreline.
Yeah, it was a beautiful demo table.
It was.
We played small boat sea games on it, and it was awesome. But we're hoping to actually put that fort to use, like with guns on it and people to shoot them in a big
I have
sea game
ladders
for you
for it
guys.
too. I handmade ladders out of popsicle sticks and stuff.
Nice.
You know,
Dick
So
also made me a
yeah.
few siege ladders, so we can throw those in if we need them.
Sweet, that's awesome. Yeah, so I'm gonna be building terrain for both of these fights. I'm probably gonna be, once you give me some assignments for the swamp, I might help make some swamp stuff. So like I'm down for like pouring water effect all over everything. I want to try that.
The
So
trifecta would be getting Dexter Hyde down here with some of his beautiful longhouses.
That'd be
it's
awesome.
gonna be really funny because you just see like it'll look like a misdrawn Simpsons cartoon, and then there's like the Mona Lisa next to it. Is basically what's gonna happen because Dexter Hyde's terrain's gonna look insane next to some of the stuff that I put together. And I've been watching his videos, and they're very, very great. But like his method for painting stone is actually like very, very clever, and he uses a lot of like craft paints and things like that. So I've been boning up on his techniques. But yeah, maybe he comes. I'm excited if I could see him in person. That'd be neat.
We also have some other big games that are kind of in the works, but we don't want to tip our hands on that just yet. But that might be able to draw some people from far off if we get those up and running.
We're talking about beyond Historicon, right?
Well beyond Historicon, yeah.
All right, so we're running short on time. So let's just mention you guys are going to host something at Critical Hit.
Yep. We're going to do kind of a practice because we've done the other tournaments before. C game, we want to make sure that we've got the times right, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be hosting me and friend of the show whose name I don't want to say a third time. Because I don't know if Tyler can make it. June 11th at Critical Hit Games, we will be hosting. We just came up with the title "Borders Without Doctors." 200-point C tournament. You don't have to bring a boarding party. You can just bring a bunch of cannon crews. It'll still be fun. And we'll see how that goes. One thing I did want to point out that I forgot, statistics-wise, historically, at Blood and Plunder tournaments before COVID, we were getting a turnout of like 15 or 16 players, and it was the same faces that I got to know, even over only a couple of conventions. The tournament we did last weekend during Easter, the only face that was a repeat was Tom. Tom was the only guy I've seen at other tournaments that played in that one. So we're actually very excited that we might have a very large tournament scene if a lot of those guys go to the convention, because I know a lot of players wanted to go and couldn't make it due to Easter. I'm really hoping that we get a huge turnout for Blood and Plunder.
We are
at
planning for 18 tables, which is 36 players. We had 22. If we can round up 14 more, including our regulars, that would be awesome. I know the guys from North Carolina said they're coming back up, and they said they might be bringing more of themselves.
I know, I'm pretty sure we've got New Yorkers coming in because I think Sean's interested, unless he goes to do something else.
If we tip 36 players, we will make more tables happen. I have a feeling.
Yeah, we'll figure it
Firelock
out.
will figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike and Rufus have us covered for that.
Yeah, we'll get it working. We want to jump Blood and Pedantry?
Yeah, so I'll talk about this. So last time we actually had a trivia question. The winner was a very kind man from Norway. And I'm pleased to report to him, if it has not yet already arrived, that through the Firelock website, since I had trouble finding a store in his area that would be able to give something to him locally, I ordered something from the Firelock website. This is Haken Arneson. His Queen Anne's Revenge and Steed Bonnet box for Oak and Iron is on the way. The overall cost of it with shipping, I think, was $76. So if it doesn't get to Norway, I'm going to be very upset with Norway. And I will make sure, come hell or high water, that it will arrive. Like, if I have to fly to Norway myself, you're going to get your prize, my friend. It may take longer than expected, but the U.S. Post Office assures me that it's on its way.
And if you have received it, please let us know.
Yes, please let us know, so that I can stop harassing and causing international incidents. So the rules, because we do have a prize to give away this time around, and I think I'm the one who came up with this question, so I'll do it if you guys are okay with it.
Sure.
Rules. You need to email us with the answer to talesofthesale@gmail.com. That's tales spelled Tales of the sale, all one word, at gmail.com. Before the next time we record, that should be about a month from now, maybe a little less, but we'll see. And we will post a reminder for you a couple of days before to make sure if you've listened to the episode, to get in your response. The prize this time around is a blister of Niasis and a native war chief. These are the ones out of the New Fire in the Frontier line of minis. Your question. And I'll point out as a clue that if you do, in fact, have in your hands the Fire in the Frontier expansion, this should be a very easy question for you to answer, but you can do it without the book as well. All right. In 1675, word reached the New England colonists that a local hostile tribe was fortifying their position in a great swamp as a possible preparation for war. In response, the colonists sent a large surprise raid to stop them. The Great Swamp Fortress was eventually conquered because it had two weaknesses which the attackers exploited. What were they? And I'll point out that these are kind of related, and we'll be pretty liberal with what we choose to accept, but it has to be accurate. Okay, so
you need two.
You need two. So the Great Swamp Fortress of 1675 gets conquered because it has two weaknesses the attackers exploited. What were the two weaknesses? The answer when we record next. Upcoming events, the next paint night is going to be on May 20th. Historicon runs from July 20th to the 24th. I will be likely doing demos with Mythicos Games in New Jersey coming up in June, but I will give you more notice about that when we next record in May. And Glenn, you mentioned the Critical Hit tournament?
Yep, that'll be June 11th. Probably need to get there around 11 o'clock a.m. That's usually their opening time.
Okay. Am I missing anything?
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we'll just have a lot more details coming in May for the Critical Hit tournament and the Mythicos demos. And I'm going to try to make it to both of those. The Critical Hit tournament is weather dependent. If I show up, I'm just going to show up to play. The demos at Mythicos, show up and help Tom. I'll have him teach me the game again. I think he has a better win record than me now.
Oh my God, you're right. I've been playing more games than you. It's unavoidable. It had to happen sooner or later.
Yeah.
All right, Glenn, take us away.
All right, guys. Well, as always, thanks for coming. We can't do it without you. This episode was a little late in the month due to a whole slew of things. We're hoping to get a little more back on track in May. It might even be fully recovered by June. But until we see you next time, thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for joining the show tonight. Remember to follow us on Twitter at No Dice, No Glory, and keep the conversation going on NoDiceNoGlory.com, now featuring our own message boards. Have a great night, everybody.